Welcome to This Week in Christian History, a podcast from the Center for Christian History at Mississippi College. The Center for Christian History is dedicated to expanding knowledge and understanding of Christian history. Our mission is to provide a scholarly, unbiased look at the events, figures, and movements that have shaped Christianity over the centuries. You can visit centerforchristianhistory.com for daily historical highlights. And each week on this podcast, we'll do a deep dive into key moments with Christian history's leading authorities. First up on our list of historical highlights for the week is Clement Moore, the poet who penned "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." Born on July 15, 1779, Moore became a professor at the General Theological Seminary in New York City, where he lectured on Greek and Oriental literature. He lived on a large estate named Chelsea on the outskirts of Manhattan, and today, the entire neighborhood on the west side is also named Chelsea. Next up on our list and the subject of our deep dive is the Great Schism, which occurred on July 16, 1054. This event took place when the churches of Rome and Constantinople split from each other and formed the Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches. In 1968, the two churches came together for the first time and apologized for the split. Last up on our list of historical highlights for the week is Jane Austen, who may very well be one of the most prolific British authors ever to have written. Austen was reared by a minister of the Church of England, and this fact is evident in her writing. Her classic novels, such as Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility, are full of characters who exude Christian ideals through their actions and morals. Austen died of Addison's disease on July 18, 1817. Today in our deep dive, Nick Walters, director of the Center for Christian History, talks with Edward Siecienski of Stockton University about the Great Schism.
Hello and welcome again to another episode of This Week in Christian History. And our focus for this week is on July 16th, 1054, in what is known as the Great Schism or the Great Schism, I guess, depending on what part of the country you're in, on however you want to be able to have that conversation. We are glad to have Dr. Ed Siecienski with us, who is at Stockton University and is a professor of religion there. And Dr. Siecienski has focused a whole deal on Orthodox and Roman Catholic back and forth in conversation. How about that? Differences of that. And so that certainly lends itself into, excuse me, be able to talk about the Great Schism. So thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
It is my genuine pleasure.
Great. So tell us a little bit, on either side, both sides, whichever way you want to look at it, what kind of really led to this one big pivotal event? It wasn't like it just happened one Thursday and somebody sent an email over and hacked off the other guy, right? I mean, this stuff had obviously been building for a while. And I say that with this in mind, as I tell my students very often, Jesus didn't give the 12 apostles a 3-ring binder and say, this is exactly the way it's going to work, and so kind of figuring those things out from a theology basis, as well as a doctrine basis and a church structure basis is a whole part of that we could say is kind of maybe a constant theme, maybe one that hadn't ended, okay, that is still going on. So that's a loaded statement / question. So sorry for that.
So when I think about the East-West Schism, I think about it almost like two brothers who grow up together and then move to different sides of the country. One moves to New York, one moves to San Francisco, and they live there for 20, 30 years and then are forced to come back together. And in doing so, they realize that they've grown to be very, very different people. And so when you look at the Greek and the Latin churches, something very similar happens there, right? There is, in a sense, one church. You have these early breakaways, the Nestorian or Church of the East, and the Copts or the Oriental Orthodox. But for the most part, you can really talk about kind of a Christian world. And over the centuries, again, the two halves of the Christian world, they begin to speak different languages, right? They speak Greek in the East and Latin in the West. Politically, you have the growth of two empires, the East Roman or Byzantine Empire in the East with its center in Constantinople, and the Holy Roman Empire with religiously at least focused on Rome, politically on Aachen. Then you have theologically the influence of Augustine in the West. He's not read in the East. Liturgically, Eastern worship and Western worship are very different. And so by the time you get to the 9th, 10th centuries, already there is tension between the two. There have been these temporary breaks in communion, but it ultimately culminates in this moment in the 11th century, July 16th, 1054, when these two hot-headed clerics, right, Michael Carolarius in the Patriarch of Constantinople and Cardinal Humbert, the representative of Pope Leo IX, excommunicate each other. And this date has been, I think, historically recognized as the beginning of the Great Schism, although most of us would say it's not. It's right that there is still on both sides a recognition that there is still one church, albeit a church that is fracturing, right? The Roman Catholic scholar Yves Congar once called this an estrangement, and that while there are moments in this estrangement, including July 16th, 1054, the process is a much longer one and probably doesn't culminate until the Fourth Crusade in 1204.
Wow. And so, which is another whole set of conversations, right? So, by this time, has the patriarch really taken on the same kind of role that the Pope has taken on within the West as he's done in the East, in the sense that following along the Petrine doctrine and following along the idea that I'm sitting on the throne of Peter, et cetera, that happens through the papacy? Has that same type of authority really been given or assumed or created for the patriarch by this time?
No. So for a couple of reasons. First is the East had always regarded the pentarchy, these 5 sees, ordered Rome, Constantinople, Alexandria, Antioch, and Jerusalem. These 5 sees acted as kind of an executive governing board for Christianity. And there was an order, Rome was first, but just because it was first, it never regarded Rome as the head. And after the Muslim conquest, when Alexandria, Antioch, and Jerusalem fall to and have to live under Islam, it really does become a, dare I say, competition between Rome and Constantinople. And although Rome's claims to primacy are largely based on a descendant from Peter as the first pope, the East never saw it that way. It always saw Rome's primacy based on the fact that it was capital of the empire. And because now Constantinople was capital of the empire, it now had a certain equality. And so those two, the fancy words for this are the principle of apostolicity, right? We're important because we have the, Peter and Paul died here, versus the principle of accommodation. The reason we're important is because we're capitals of a political empire. But the reason that Constantinople never develops the same kind of structures that the papacy does is that the patriarch is living right under the shadow of the emperor, and whereas the Roman popes aren't, and very often they're in competition with the emperor.
Sure.
But because they have this kind of this political religious balance in Byzantium, with the emperor always exercising a certain degree of control over the church, the patriarch isn't able to kind of make the same kind of claims that the Pope is making in Rome.
Interesting. And so not only the Pope, it's not just right with what's going on in the West. He has not only the Holy Roman Emperor to deal with, but he's also got kings trying to be kings in England and France and Spain and other places like that too, right? Plus the Papal States and all the rest of that. You kind of throw all of that into the mix, then maybe there's some more of a vacuum of sorts that can kind of be filled, if I could use that word right, where the Pope is able to kind of be the main religious guy with all those guys but except hey, look, I can go meet you down at the corner for a latte this afternoon, Emperor and Patriarch, right? I know where you are, right?
Yeah.
I see you all the time, and we know what we're doing, and that has a dynamic to it, right? It's kind of interesting for that. Huh.
Yeah. I mean, one of the interesting things about, the West is, as you said, power, there's this idea of like nature, abhors a vacuum. And with the collapse of Western imperial authority, the Pope does begin to take on a lot of the roles, like filling that role of maintaining a certain degree of order in the West. And when in the 11th century, the church has had a period of some rather not really great popes,
Right.
the time of the pornocracy and a lot of naughty popes at this time.
Right.
And there's this reforming movement. We call it the Gregorian reform, but it really begins before Gregory. And the feeling is that in order to reform the church, the popes need the authority in order to appoint the kind of bishops who will do that. And this means kind of making claims to power and authority over and above kings and emperors.
Mm-hmm.
And so while some people have historically perceived a power grab on the part of the papacy during this time, it really is kind of a power that they feel they need in order to clean up and reform the church in the face of a lot of opposition. Kings and emperors like being able to appoint their buddies and cronies to bishoprics because they're pliable. They'll do what they want. But that's not the kind of reforming bishop that the Pope needs in order to carry out this program.
You can watch the rest of Nick's interview with Edward Siecienski on the Center for Christian History website at centerforchristianhistory.com. This Week in Christian History is produced for the Center for Christian History by Blue and Gold Media at Mississippi College, in cooperation with the MC Department of Communication. For episode transcripts and more information, visit centerforchristianhistory.com. Be sure to subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and follow the Center for Christian History on Facebook at the Center for Christian History, and on Instagram at Christ Hist Today. That's ChristHistToday. Our next podcast episode is coming next week. Thank you for listening.